You're watching a Newsmax election special. Countdown to the midterms. You decide 2014.
Hi, folks. Welcome back. Steve Malzberg from our New York studios, and joining us right here in New York is Sheinkopf, Newsmax analyst and Democratic strategist, and from Washington, Stephen Moore, chief economist at the Heritage Foundation. Gentlemen, we're just embarking on what's going to be a long night and a very exciting night, and we're going to get a lot of numbers. And so far, and I have to laugh, Hank, because all day the liberal TV networks we're talking about the Mitch McConnell-Grimes race as if this was even a race. I mean, it's been over for weeks, and they were, oh, McConnell, can he win? And what do you? Yeah. And it was called 10 minutes after the polls closed, and Mitch McConnell has maintained his seat.
As I'm sure, Steve, you'll recall, I said on this program with you at this station that, in fact, McConnell would be a breeze and walk through. And the tip-off was when the Democratic Senate Campaign Committee decided not to spend any more money there and to shift resources that they did not have a lot of to other states where senators were in trouble.
And, Stephen, that happened right after she had her debate and refused for the second time to say whether or not she voted for Barack Obama.
Yeah, I think the big loser tonight is going to be Barack Obama, because so many Democrats distanced themselves from him, Steve. They've distanced themselves from his policies. And, you know, the one thing that really infuriated a lot of the Democrats that I know in this town, and I'm in Washington, D.C. right now, is remember, Steve, when Barack Obama said about 2 weeks ago, I'm not on the ballot, but my policies will be. And that freaked a lot of Democrats out, because that's the last thing that voters want, that they wanted voters to be reminded of. You know, I'm in Washington, D.C., and I don't know if you've heard this, Steve, but the Democrats have canceled all parties in this town tonight. No parties.
No, I did not know that. Is that a smart move, Hank?
You know what? Why would you have a party at a funeral? You know, there's you just don't
Exactly.
do it. This is a very bad night for Democrats for different reasons. Barack Obama took a terrific pounding, as Steve Moore knows, on health care. Terrific pounding. He didn't get any credit for the economy. He was incapable of communicating with the electorate. And the end result, well, incumbents that should be elected are not going to be reelected.
Well, Stephen, you know, you and I have talked about this so many times, and you've written about in the Wall Street Journal and elsewhere about the people who are being hurt most by Barack Obama's economic policies. And these are the people that they've been pleading with, begging to please come out and vote, and even using, you know, the race card to scare them into voting. But it all comes down to economics. And if the millennials and the minorities in this country and that block and those blocks are not benefiting and are suffering, they're not going to come out and vote.
You know, I think the most interesting thing we're going to find out tonight, Steve, even more so than kind of who wins these races and who loses, is what has happened to the kind of core Democratic constituency. You mentioned a few of those groups, and remember, we talked about this on the radio on Saturday. You mentioned the minorities, blacks and Hispanics. The polls are showing so far that that they are appealing a little bit away from Democrats. And then you've got the blue-collar, middle-class voters who've been kind of the core of the Democratic Party, the unionized Reagan Democrats. Some of them may be coming back to the Republicans right now. And that's a big, and by the way, you mentioned millennials. That's an interesting one, because young people, remember, it was 6 years ago, my goodness, they all bought into hope and change, and now they're just looking for a job.
Stephen Moore is on the mark here, as often the case, whether you agree with him or not. Frankly, step back, take a look and say Reagan Democrats, they're no longer Reagan Democrats. They're kind of new Republicans, and they're going to be there for a while. Part of this is also due to foreign policy, and it's very unusual when foreign policy has anything to do with any kind of election that's domestic in this country. Why? Seeing Americans having their heads removed by terrorists, watching a president who can't make decisions, who changes his mind quickly, not very good. Americans don't like instability.
Let me ask both of you, and Hank, let me go ahead, Stephen. Go ahead.
Just add to that. You know, I think the other thing we haven't talked enough about is just the competency issue, Steve. You know, the people who are kind of non-ideological and don't live and breathe politics like you and I do, they just want, you know, people to be able to be competent in Washington and solve problems. And they've seen how so many of these problems, like, you know, the jobless problem, the Ebola issue, you know, the fact that we've been so feeble in responding to foreign threats, and the IRS scandal, on and on I could go. But it's a non-ideological issue. It's just We want things to work in Washington, and they're not working at all.
Right, and let me point out, the president today called in, I think it was to PBS, and he was talking about how this is how our political system works. He was distancing himself from being blamed. He said it's kind of like luck of the draw that the states that are up for re-election in the Senate, you know, a lot of red states and a lot of states that traditionally vote Republican, and basically that's why things are going to go the way they're going, Hank, and that's, you know, that's really I think an inaccurate reading of what's going on. You agree?
He is a lousy communicator, and he's very churlish. When he showed up at a rally this past week talking about healthcare, he said, well, you know, they don't want to tell you, but, by the way, that's not the way to do it. He's not creating any friends. And the problem's going to be if the Senate does go down, how he's going to get things done. Bill Clinton understood the need, no matter who was in power on the other side, to work together to get some accomplishments, and he did. This guy's going to have a problem.
Yeah, Stephen, does he have it in him to compromise and get anything done with a Republican Senate?
Well, let's start with the Republicans. Do they have it in themselves to get anything done? You know, look, I still have a lot of contempt for Republicans too. So I'm not trying to sound like a rah-rah Republican. I think this is more a vote, you know, of disparagement to the Democrats and a rejection of the Democrats than it is a rah-rah Republican vote. So that means, Steve, that these Republicans are going to have to stand and deliver now. They're going to have to show they can pass bills that are good for the economy.
We shall see.
Well,
all right, Stephen Moore, Hank Sheinkopf. We will be back. Mitch McConnell wins the Senate in Kentucky. Nikki Haley wins the governor's race in South Carolina. And we will be back with more of the countdown to the midterms. You decide 2014, coming back on Newsmax Television in just a moment.
Countdown to the midterms. You decide 2014. We'll be back in just a moment.